smart handling of retail returns, managing global trade complexity, and the new administration fills out its roles. Pull up a chair and join us as the editors of DC Velocity discuss these stories as well as news and supply chain trends on this week's Logistics Matters podcast. Hi, I'm Dave Maloney. I'm the Group Editorial Director at DC Velocity. Welcome. Logistics Matters is sponsored by CSCMP Edge 2025. New year, new you. It's time to level up at CSCMP's Edge 2025 Supply Chain Conference. Mark your calendar for October 5th through 8th at the Gaylord National in Washington to join supply chain's best in gaining cutting-edge insights and elevate your career. As a Logistics Matters listener, save $500 on registration with code LOGISTICS. Start your year strong and secure your spot at Edge 2025. Go to cscmpedge.org to learn more. As usual, our DC Velocity senior editors Ben Ames and Victoria Kickham will be along to provide their insights into the top stories of this week. But to begin today, retailers have just completed a very successful holiday shopping season. But of course, now those retailers are dealing with all those unwanted gifts in the form of returns. Are there ways they can successfully manage them? To find out, here is Ben with today's guest. Ben?
Thanks, Dave. That's exactly right. The Christmas might be in the rearview mirror for most consumers, but even though we're at the end of January here, that season is still going strong for retailers and 3PLs, and that's because that hefty portion of a lot of the gifts that people have given and received do end up being returned. So stores and DCs everywhere have stacks of returned goods that they're working to process right now. And here with us today to talk about the best strategies for managing that annual challenge is Kristen Purvis, who's a product manager with ePost Global. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you for having me.
To start us off today, maybe you could just give us a quick description of what ePost Global does and what role the company plays in this overall returns conversation.
Sure. ePost Global is a leading provider of global shipping solutions. They've been in business for over 25 years, and they have been delivering innovative and cost-effective solutions for that time period, including returns handling and reverse logistics.
Great. Sounds right on topic for this. So looking at this past year here in 2024 and beginning of 2025 here, are there any sort of high altitude trends that you've seen in the market?
Yes, there are. The first that I want to highlight is that consumers are more informed about retailers' return policies, and this affects now up to 90% of consumers for future purchases. So it's very important that having a proper return policy in place is more important than ever. But the top three trends that we're seeing for 2024 that we expect to continue into 2025 is first, that retailers are moving away from return fees. So now more than 80% of retailers are charging for at least one return method, which is used to help offset the increasing return costs and aiding in managing consumer behavior. The second that we're seeing is the adoption of no return options. Policies like keep it or donate it are gaining traction over the course of the last year, and we see that moving forward in 2025 as well, which allows for reduced return costs for lower value items as well as cost prohibitive return items. And then the third that we're seeing is more in AI enabled and tech driven optimization, which is allowing for AI processes to aid with operational planning and predicting return volume. AI included within the return process has also been seen to positively influence the reduction of return orders when used appropriately. And then I think as we're looking forward into the upcoming year, retailers will focus more on refining these strategies to aid in balancing cost and customer satisfaction, while also looking to reduce return fraud and serial returners. There are other changes upcoming that we will see more traction within 2025, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a moment.
Yeah, indeed. A lot of challenges in there. Maybe we can dig a little bit deeper. Can you tell us a little bit more about how retailers are refining those strategies to balance the really climbing costs that you described with that customer satisfaction?
Sure, there are different strategies that retailers are using that help balance that along with safeguarding their bottom line. So, the first, I think, is communicating return policies transparently and clearly. More than 76% of consumers review a company's return policy before they make a purchase. So it's very important to have that return policy list everything that's necessary for a consumer to manage that return appropriately, like return fees, conditions for returns, and deadlines. It's also important that different return charge strategies are being used in order to find that right size of return policy for a retailer that balances that customer satisfaction and cost component. One approach that is being used to allow for consumers to unlock free returns is through membership or loyalty programs, where there is a monthly subscription fee, but it helps allow for consumers to receive free returns for retailers that they frequently buy from. And this is a great option for apparel specifically. But alternatively, implementing different tiered approaches to return rates is something that we're seeing very much of, which is any of the orders that are on a lower value end, there will be a return charge applicable to those orders. But those retailers are also offering incentive for free returns if they spend over a certain amount. I think it's also worth pointing out, though, that there are other areas that you can refine your return strategy by looking at what markets and products could benefit from a returnless option. So anywhere where there's maybe a low value or a bulky item that's cost prohibitive for returns, employing a returnless option allows for the buyer to receive the refund, but the retailer to avoid those additional increased costs.
Gotcha. Really interesting options in there. So with all that sending back and forth, I know there's packaging and the costs of the actual handling. How does sustainability come into this conversation?
Sustainability is a huge topic in general, but definitely focused on return logistics as well. I want to share a few stats with you just to put context into how sustainability and the reverse logistics will become a very hot topic. E-commerce returns have doubled since 2019. And then the 2024 retail return statistic is approaching $900 billion. That figure is not yet finalized, but that's still substantial. And also nearly 10 billion pounds of returns. Those same returns are ending up in landfills, which isn't great for the environment. So this is becoming very much an item of significance for retailers and shippers that need to adopt more sustainable practices to support the returns. So by offering that returnless refund option that I've mentioned a few times, I can cut down on emissions and overall wastes, but also using eco-friendly return options like consolidated return hubs or carbon neutral shipping can also help reduce environmental impact. Shippers can also partner with other services like drop-off services that allow for use of more package-less or label-free returns, often using QR codes, which helps minimize overall packaging waste. And then other options to employ as well is allowing for consumers to donate those unwanted items instead of returning them, and looking to employ a more circular economy by taking those return items and setting up buyback or resale programs.
Yeah, sounds like a whole lot of challenges to keep in mind with the sustainability there. You had mentioned earlier about artificial intelligence having a rising role. Are you seeing some real world applications of that?
Yes, absolutely. So AI is a very powerful tool in general. Specific to the returns management, when used in order to gather information on why a consumer is returning a good, It allows for a feedback loop to be provided into the shopping experience up front. So I do recommend that AI isn't just utilized on the back end, but is looked holistically and implemented on the website for the checkout process. And by collecting this data within the return process and allowing for any size discrepancies or color discrepancies to be included within that product description allows for the minimizing of dissatisfaction when the consumer receives the product and thereby enabling less returns. AI can also enable more operational efficiencies like forecasting return volume, which is critical this time of the year.
Yeah, big time. So we have just a minute or so left here, Kristen. It's been a great conversation. Looking a little bit down the road, are there any sort of regulatory changes or global trends that retailers should be keeping an eye out for on this topic as we head into 2025?
Yes, there are several regulatory changes and global trends that need to be monitored over the course of this year. First, being that major platforms like Amazon are enforcing stricter standardized return policies. So, we already saw this the end of last year with Amazon mandating a return option or a return list option for anything sold on their UK marketplace. It's also important to keep in tune with the import and export tariff changes, as well as changes in VAT thresholds. Other regulations to be aware of is AI will become more tightly monitored over the course of this year and the upcoming years to ensure compliance with data privacy rules like GDPR, which is important within the EU. And we will also see that governments will start enforcing more rules around return related emissions and waste management. So, especially as the EU Green Deal comes together with TimeWise, we will see more of local government enforcing mandates within country that other international shippers need to be in tune with. For example, Switzerland is considering to add a national return fee to help deter returns and support the sustainability measurements.
Really appreciate your taking some time to come on the show today and talk through all these interesting issues, Kristen. I appreciate your coming on.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Our guest today has been Kristen Purvis from ePost Global. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Kristen and Ben. Now let's take a look at some of the other supply chain news from the week. And Victoria, you reported this week on what companies should do to manage the increasing complexities around global trade. Can you share the details?
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to, Dave. So, technology is vital to any business operation, but a recent study shows that logistics leaders view it as fundamental to managing growth in an increasingly complex global trade environment. The study, which was released this week by logistics technology vendor Descartes Systems Group, polled nearly 1,000 supply chain and logistics leaders from across Europe, North and South America, and Asia Pacific to kind of gauge their feelings on this subject. And what they found is that 74% of supply chain and logistics leaders view technology as fundamental or highly important to their organization's growth strategy in the face of rising global trade challenges. Things like tariffs and trade barriers, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical instability.
Well, Victoria, technology tools certainly can help to manage today's complex business demands, but what specific technologies did the authors say are the most important for the logistics industry?
Well, it boils down to three main things, according to those surveyed. 36% cited global trade intelligence, which can help identify new suppliers, markets, and customers as the top capability required to deliver the greatest value in the next 2 years. And that was followed by global trade analytics at 27% and supply chain mapping at 26%. The need for global trade intelligence ranked first among all industries covered in the survey, too. So, examples include manufacturing, wholesale and distribution, finance and insurance, and retail sectors. So, really, kind of that intelligence gathering piece. Any tools that can kind of help companies do that is really the top thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it definitely is a concern how global trade will evolve this year, especially as we see how proposed tariffs play out and will impact any new trade deals.
Absolutely, it's an interesting thing to watch for sure.
And we will be watching it. Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
And Ben, speaking of tariffs and some of these things that we've been talking about, the new administration in Washington, of course, has been working to fill various roles in our government, and some of those will affect our industry. Can you tell us who may be filling those roles?
Yeah, I'm glad to. It sure has been a busy week in Washington, D.C., as the new Trump administration has come in with the inauguration just on Monday. And that really officially started the process for the Senate to perform its famous duty of advise and consent of most of the president's nominees for those top posts. So we've been seeing a lot of hearings and committees as the process moves forward. The top one of those that has a lot to do, of course, with supply chain and transportation is Trump's pick to lead the Department of Transportation, and that's Sean Duffy. He's a former Republican congressman from Wisconsin. He was nominated back in November, and by all parties' accounts, he had a smooth committee hearing about a week ago, January 15th. And then on Wednesday, he won approval from the Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, actually by a unanimous vote of 28-0. So next, he will head toward a vote before the full Senate. And assuming that he wins a majority there, then he would succeed Pete Buttigieg as the next Secretary of Transportation. We don't yet know the date of that vote, but on all counts, Duffy does seem to be in good position to gain that stamp of approval.
Well, Ben, it was sort of a rocky electoral season, so it's good to see some bipartisan agreement, at least on some of the decisions moving forward. What else did we learn this week?
Yeah, there are a couple other names that we heard about here. These two were not, cabinet level decisions, so they weren't going to need a full Senate vote, but they do still have a lot of import here for trade and transportation. So the first one was that the president designated Patrick Fuchs to be chair of the Surface Transportation Board. Aside from just the partisan turnover there, Fuchs was previously a staffer actually for Senator John Thune, who's now the Senate Majority Leader. But aside from that, there's not a lot of churn expected there, since Fuchs has actually been sitting on that Surface Transportation Board since 2019. And as a reminder, this board is the one that holds the regulatory power that can really make some significant decisions. The one that comes to mind is their recent approval of a $31 billion merger in 2023 between Canadian Pacific Railway and the U.S. freight rail line Kansas City Southern. And then the other name that we heard this week was Trump's decision to designate Louis Sola as chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission. Likewise, Sola has actually been on that board since 2019. His past before that, he had lost an attempted run for Congress from Miami. So he's not a surprising choice either. And for context, the Federal Maritime Commission also makes some significant decisions in our sector. Recent ones that come to mind are sorting out some disagreements between maritime container carriers and the shippers and manufacturers who provide that cargo. And those shippers and manufacturers in recent years have been complaining about things like port congestion and container handling delays and related detention and demurrage fees. So the Federal Maritime Commission is the federal regulatory agency that tries to sort that out. So these are all issues that make big differences in our industry. And the picture is starting to clear up a little bit as the dust settles after the election.
Right. And I guess there's more to come as we'll see other nominations move on to hearings and then to confirmations.
There sure is. We'll keep a close eye on it.
Thank you, Ben.
Glad to.
We encourage listeners to go to dcvelocity.com for more on these and other supply chain stories. Also, check out the podcast notes section for some direct links to read more about the topics that we discussed today. And we'd like to thank Kristen Purvis of ePost Global for being our guest. We welcome your comments on this topic and our other stories. You can email us at podcast@agilebme.com. We also encourage you to subscribe to Logistics Matters at your favorite podcast platform. Our new episodes are uploaded on Fridays. And a reminder that Logistics Matters is sponsored by CSCMP Edge 2025. New year, new you. It's time to level up at CSCMP's Edge 2025 Supply Chain Conference. Mark your calendar for October 5th through 8th at the Gaylord National in Washington to join Supply Chain's best to gain cutting-edge insights and elevate your career. As a Logistics Matters listener, save $500 on registration using code LOGISTICS. Start your year strong and secure your spot at Edge 2025. Go to csempedge.org to learn more. We'll be back again next week with another edition of Logistics Matters. Be sure to join us. Until then, have a great week.